You really wanted this to work. Not just a little. You actually believed in it. You saw something there. Something that made sense to you. Something that felt like it could become important. And that's why you didn't treat it lightly. You gave it your attention. You gave it your energy. You gave it your time, even when you didn't realize how much of yourself you were putting into it. Because in your mind, it wasn't just another situation. It had potential. It had meaning. It felt like something that could turn into something real. And for a moment, it really looked like it might. There were signs, small moments that felt right, things that made you pause and think, maybe this is it. Maybe this is what I've been waiting for. And those moments stayed with you. They made you imagine. They made you create a version of the future where this actually worked, where this became something stable, something meaningful, something that stayed. And once you start imagining that, it's hard to let go. Because now it's not just reality, it's expectation, it's possibility, it's something you've already started to emotionally invest in. And that's where it gets complicated. Because even when things start to shift, you don't want to see it. Even when something feels off, you try to explain it. Even when things stop flowing, you try to fix it. Because you're not just dealing with what it is, you're holding on to what it could be. And that's powerful, but it can also blind you. Because slowly, things started to change. Not in a way that was obvious, not in a way that forced you to stop immediately, but in small ways, subtle ways, things that didn't feel as natural anymore. Things that required more effort than they should have. Things that made you question, even if you didn't want to. And you felt it. That quiet discomfort, that internal hesitation, that sense that something wasn't aligning the way it did before. But instead of stepping back, you leaned in. You tried harder. You gave more. You adjusted yourself, hoping that would fix it. Because you didn't want to lose it. You didn't want to accept that it might not work. So you kept going, even when it felt heavier, even when it felt less clear, even when something inside you was starting to whisper, "This isn't right." And then it didn't work out, not the way you expected, not the way you hoped. It stopped. It fell apart. It didn't continue. And that moment, that realization, hit differently. Because it wasn't just about losing something. It was about losing something you believed in. Something you thought could become part of your life. And when that doesn't happen, it leaves a gap. Not just in your situation, but in your understanding. Because now you're left asking questions. Why didn't this work? What did I miss? Was there something I could have done differently? And naturally, you turn inward. You question yourself. You replay everything. You look for mistakes because it feels easier to believe that you did something wrong than to accept that it was never meant to happen. But what if that's not the truth? What if it didn't work? Not because you failed, but because it was never aligned? What if the resistance you felt wasn't something to overcome, but something to listen to? Because not everything that looks right is right for you. Not everything that feels possible is meant to stay. And not everything you want is something you're meant to build your life around. And that's difficult to accept. Because when something feels close, you don't want to believe it's not yours. You don't want to believe it won't happen. You don't want to let go of something that almost became something, but almost matters. because almost shows you that it wasn't fully aligned, that something didn't fit, that something wasn't holding the way it should. And when something is truly right, you don't have to force it into place. You don't have to carry it by yourself. You don't have to constantly question it. There's a different kind of stability, a different kind of clarity, a different kind of flow. And when that's missing, it's not something to ignore. It's something to recognize. Because sometimes what you're experiencing isn't loss, it's protection. It's something being removed before it takes more from you, before it becomes harder to leave, before it becomes something you're deeply attached to that you later have to break away from. Because if it had worked, you would have stayed. You would have gone deeper. You would have invested more, and walking away later would have been much harder, much more painful, much more complicated. So, instead, it didn't work. It ended early. It stopped before it fully became something. And from your perspective, that feels like something went wrong. But from a bigger perspective, something went right. Something was prevented. Something was redirected. Something was removed before it could cost you more than you realize. And that doesn't always feel good, because protection doesn't always feel like protection. Sometimes it feels like rejection. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like confusion. But that doesn't change what it is, because God doesn't just guide you forward. He also pulls things away. He doesn't just open doors. He closes them too. And not to hurt you, but to protect your future. To keep you from building something on something that wouldn't last. And once you start seeing it that way, your perspective changes. You stop asking, why didn't this work out? And you start asking, what was I being protected from? And that question brings clarity. Not all at once, not immediately, but gradually. Because now you're not trying to hold on to something that's gone. You're understanding why it had to go. And that understanding creates peace. Because now you can move forward without trying to fix something that wasn't meant to stay. So the next time something doesn't work out, don't rush to bring it back. Don't rush to fix it. Pause. Look at it differently. Ask yourself, what if this wasn't meant for me? What if this is actually protecting me? Because it might be. And the more you trust that, the easier it becomes to let go. Not because it didn't matter, but because you understand it wasn't meant to stay. So let this be your prayer. God, help me accept what doesn't work out. Help me trust when something is removed, and give me the clarity to see that not everything I want is something I need. Because I know now that what leaves my life might be making space for what truly belongs in it. If this spoke to you, comment, I trust your plan, and subscribe for daily reflections.